It's my time, it's my season, and I've got a good reason to open my mouth. Gonna let it out, open your mind, grab your friend. Hope you listen to the end. The vibe is good and learning meets on She Who Speaks.
Hi, welcome back. Thanks for joining us on She Who Speaks. I'm Renee, lover of a good laugh and all things behavioral. With me is the beautiful Marilyn. She is unassuming with a good listening ear. We're really missing Love Min, or angelic voice and unstoppable force, but she's working on something super exciting, and we can't wait to share it with you. Love Min, we love you. Hurry back. But we're so delighted to have the beauty and brains that is Miss Shaenor. Shaenor, can you give us just a tidbit about who you are?
Yes. So my name is Shaenor Ishmael. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I am the owner and a therapist at Inspired Counseling Center LLC. It is a counseling therapy session that is located in the heart of Orlando, but we also do telesessions for the entire Florida. You can always visit us at our website, inspired with a D, counselingcenter.com, just to get some more information about us. I specialize in all things from anxiety, depression, marriage and family, relationship counseling. I cover pretty broad spectrum, including women mental health. So that's kind of my passion at the time.
And don't worry, we're going to put that link in the description box for you. So you can already tell we are going to have an amazing time. Before I say what we're talking about, ladies, I this time have the scoop, because Marilyn is always the one that brings us up to speed. I'm not going to dive too deeply in the semantics of it, but there seems to be a lot of chatter about who a certain young lady, Steve Harvey's daughter, is dating. And
Lori Harvey.
yes. And so it made me think, is there a double standard? And here's what I mean. I feel like when a guy dates different females, celebrity or not, it's kind of like, no big deal. It's a guy thing. But as females, if we date around, I feel like there's so much backlash. Am I the only one that thinks that?
Such a hot topic right now. Um, it is this, I always say this sentence, and I use it a lot in my sessions and related to others, in that your live experiences dictate your values, your morals, and your ethics.
Mm-hmm.
So the live experiences that you have had is going to influence your outlook on this situation, right? It's going to tell you whether there's a double standard or not.
Mm-hmm.
In society, we have societal norms that we tend to gravitate towards, to often dictate how we should behave, how we should act as women. Because a lot of times these societal norms are very women conscious more than they are for men. So for this situation, like I said, it's such a hot topic. And my personal philosophy of it is, she's young. A part of figuring out who you're compatible with, a part of figuring out who you can develop a long relationship with, is to date other people.
Exactly.
That is really how you develop your ideal list of criteria. If you don't date other people, you don't know what you like or what you don't like.
True.
So as she knows, hopefully with this relationship, she's been through the others, and she knows, well, this is not something I want for myself in this relationship.
Right.
So she's developing her compatible list. And I think a lot of times people think, I hate generalizing, but that as women, we're supposed to be so overt in our dating that we're not supposed to talk about it. We're not supposed to disclose it. If you're not in a long relationship, you shouldn't be talking about it. And who's to say that we have to abide by societal norms, right? Societal norms evolve, societal norms change. It is up to us to push the issues, to say, as women, this is not anyone's business.
Exactly.
Who cares?
Exactly. And to me, it's really, it's not gender related. To me, it's just about your personality. If you feel like that's who you are and that's what you want to do with your life and your body and you what you need to commit to someone, then that's you. I, as an introvert, I don't. I'm terrified. I would be terrified. But as long as for me you are able to maintain your sanity and just um be who you are, that's really your concern and everybody else's concern. So that's
I'm
my
going to
take on
say something that may sound a little radical, but Karen and I have talked about this all the time. Um, when we have a daughter claiming that,
it.
and if not, I'm going to have to take one of you're going to have a daughter and just give it to me. But when we have a daughter, we decided that we wanted to raise our son and our daughter the same way, understanding that I'm not advocating for sexual relationships, but I feel like there's more value in general going wide and then narrowing. So dating someone in the true context of getting to know, going out with them, talking to them, knowing what you like, and go, okay, it's not this kind, and then narrowing down, because I feel like a lot of times we just get so tunnel vision at the first person that says, now Shaenor, you're kind of cute, girl. I'm like, oh my God,
Correct.
really? And now
Right,
we're going
right.
Thank
steady.
you.
And now we're going
Oh, yeah.
steady. And now you've broken my heart. And now there's this, when you didn't even have to get to that point if you were kind of interviewing, if you will, and kind of narrowing down your selection. So for me, I don't see the big deal in dating in the true sense of the
Correct.
word widely, and then narrowing down once you've figured out who or what it is you're looking for. But
Yeah.
Correct. I agree.
yeah.
It is important to date. I don't know why this is such a big issue. She's dating. It is important as young people to date. I don't understand what the issue is, to be honest.
Right,
I
right.
don't
And
get
it's
it, but
also, to me, it also depends of your value. If you feel like you are faithful to your values, then that's all. My values might not look like someone else's value. I was not educated. I did not receive the same education as someone else. And you have to respect that everybody, your life and your vision of courtship might not look like someone else's
True.
vision of
Correct.
courtship. But there was something funny actually that my cousin published on Facebook this week, and it was a father, like it was a gender reveal. And then the father was excited, and in his mind it was a boy. He was sure that it was a boy, and sure enough, it was a girl. And then you hear the music of a tune that I'm not going to sing. That something that two ladies are singing about a lot of like sexual liberation recently. I'm sure you see what I'm talking about right now. So he heard the song in his mind, and he could see his daughter being like super naughty in his mind, and
Oh man.
like it's like you could see he could see the future, seeing a daughter and what she would do with her body and stuff, and that made me laugh. But at the same time, and I showed it to my husband. He said, "Yeah, when you have a daughter, it's your princess. You want to protect her." And
Yeah.
so I understand that sometimes people's perspective of a girl, like a father to his daughter, can be different. Doesn't mean that you should not get educated and on things, but I understand how for a father you want to protect your daughter and things like that. But yeah, I thought it was funny and interesting also to get the perspective of.
And it definitely, I feel like it's interesting to us because, so if you've been following our podcast schedule, we're still on the theme of love and relationship. And the last one was about, living single, which was tons and tons of fun, where we spoke with Danielle and she kind of shared the single experience. So now we're kind of moving it up a notch as to what it looks like to actually court and move into the stage of marriage. And Marilyn, go ahead and just kick us off, because I feel like your question that you mentioned earlier was super, super integral in kind of understanding that process. So I'll just shut up and let you.
So Shaenor just talked about compatibility. And it's one of the factors that is so important when you decide to commit to someone, to get engaged, or I mean, to maybe go into a relationship, commit to a relationship, then to get engaged, etc., etc. So how do you know if you're compatible with someone? That I think that's a question that a lot of ladies would like to know.
Yes.
Good luck.
It's such a tough question because
Yeah.
it's such an individualized question.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing we have to understand is that love and compatibility are not mutually exclusive.
Mm,
So you can be in love with someone, but you're not compatible.
Mm,
wow.
And you can be compatible with someone and you're not in love. That's what makes friendships. Friendships is a part of compatibility, right? Well, a lot of times when we think of compatibility, we think of the relationships and a romantic aspect. We think of marriage, but there's a compatibility portion that comes with friendship. So you have to kind of, a lot of people think, well, I'm compatible with this person, so I must love this person.
Mm,
Doesn't have to be. And it's the same thing with, like, it's kind of with lust, right? You can't be compatible with someone and being lust with them, where it's not love.
right.
So I think we first have to separate those two concepts of compatibility and love to kind of analyze them individually. Compatibility is this mutual relationship, mutual understanding, where you guys kind of just fit. You just, issues arise, you resolve them. There's no big dramatic outburst of such sort that can't be resolved, right? That is compatibility. It is a mutual, I call it that, you're in this happy place where you guys just, you fit together, right? Now, like I said, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're in love with the person. And then, like I said, the opposite, where you can be in love with someone where this person, you know, they support you, like you physically are and emotionally, spiritually in love with this person, but you're not, that's where you're not compatible. And that's when we then get into relationships where we're like, we're in love with this person, but then there's so much going on in it. There's so much drama. There's so many arguments. You guys just don't get along because you're in love with them, but you're not compatible.
That makes so much sense. I kind of remember like the puppy love stages, like when I was a teenager, and you feel like these intense butterflies, and the person comes by and you're like, I can't breathe, and I'm still in love. But based on what I'm hearing you say, that's not love. You know, love. I think I've always thought of love as being more of a principle. Sure, it makes me feel good. Sure, I get these endorphins when they're around, but it's not this, oh my, I'm so queasy in my stomach. Like I feel so overcome with emotions, like to the point where they're clearly doing you dirty. They're clearly not the right fit, but I'm just so in love. Perhaps, you know, based on what I'm hearing you say, that we have to separate the two. Correct. And that does not necessarily equate love. Kind of more lustful, if you ask me. But let me ask you this. You know how a lot of times as relationships go further, and especially if they're not working out, it's kind of like hindsight is 2020. And we say, man, I didn't know that they were like this. Do we really see red flags? And how can you tell if you're just being picky or if you're really seeing red flags?
Okay. So you're skipping. Red flags for me are your realistic expectations. When you see red flags are built based on what you look for in a person, in a spouse, because we're talking marriage. You cannot, for red flags, they encompass our morals, our ethics, our values, our whole belief system, right? So when you see someone that is doing something, participating in something that is in opposite of what your belief system then stands for, those are red flags, because those are qualities you can't change. When you think red flags, think things that remember, people say you can't change a person. It's true. You can't change a person. Don't marry someone thinking, I'm going to change you. It's not going to work. You're going to get divorced. You're going to have drama. Don't do it. Look at your belief system. If this person is behaving or doing actions in something that contradicts your belief system, those are red flags. Now, when we say being picky, things like they leave their shoes at the front door. That's being picky, okay? Take it up, move it. It's something that, this is things that can be taught, right? When you say, I want the big one, right? A lot of people, 6'6", 6 feet high, 6 salary. I don't even know what the other 6 is, to be honest.
6-pack maybe.
6-pack, that's what it is. 6-pack, 6 figures, 6 feet high, right? That is your preference. That does not necessarily mean if you see someone without these qualities, that's a red flag.
Right.
Because those are things, except for the height component, that can change, right?
True.
Those are, yes, it's, and I don't want you, a lot of people, they tend to, I don't want you to fall in love with the idea that you have of someone, because that is dangerous.
Now, say that again. That's a good one.
Okay. Yes. Because we take what you see at face value, right? Don't analyze it. Don't evaluate it. Take it at face value and say, is this something I can tolerate for the rest of my life?
That's amazing that you said that, because I used to think, man, that's not a very positive approach. Because honestly, I would always tell people when we were younger in college and kind of thinking about, you start having those thoughts. Who do I want? What am I looking for? I remember my mom was always very open and very honest with us. And, she did a very good job at guiding us and helping us to figure out how to choose someone. And I remember I'd always talk with my friends and I'd say, based on what I'd learned, just find someone whose faults you can live with. Because I feel like we are so often sold this idea of true love, and he rode up on a white horse and everything was so
rescued me,
and he and you get married, and men find out that the women don't necessarily wake up with their face and hair laid. Sometimes if you have a perm, you may have, I don't know if people still do rollers, but I mean, you might have rollers, you may have the scarf, the bonnet, right?
The bonnet life all day.
All day.
Amen.
So, I mean, just pick someone who, and when people get married, they get comfortable, but I'm not going to jump ahead of you. Go ahead.
So, and then also when we're talking about being too picky, you brought up a good topic. No one's perfect. Okay, you're not gonna find this perfect spouse. You could, if you want to create him yourself, you can go ahead, but you're not gonna work. You're gonna imagine him in your head, but it's not gonna be the person that's in front of you. No one is perfect. So for you to go in looking for this perfect person, I wish you good luck. Right?
Definitely.
You have to. And that goes back to compatibility, right? You have to be compatible in the fact that even things that are not necessarily something that you were looking for, but it's something that you can live with, compatible. You're compatible with that person for the rest of your life, right? Personal anecdote. My husband, right? I love him to death. He's very type A. I am not, right? He likes things in a particular way. This is going to be like this. This is going to be like that. I knew that going into the marriage, right? So therefore, that is something I have said, we are compatible in that, because where I lack, he's there, right? So it's not necessarily something that I was looking for, but it's something that is compatible to me.
Right. Complement you.
Correct. And is it always perfect? No. But that is a part of marriage.
Right.
Right? So it's this list that people have, I caution them to be very careful with it.
And I feel like, to me, I mean, when I was looking for someone, I was looking for someone, like you said, who had the same value as me, that was not perfect, but someone also that you might not change that person, but you make this person better, like a better version of themselves. Even if they are not that they are not exactly what you imagine or what you want them to, like as you said, like they place when they put their shoes right there and they do this just like I want it and stuff. You want someone that can sit with you, and when you say, hey, when you put your shoes there, it makes me feel this way and this, and someone that can understand you, and that over time they might not always do what you want, but they understand how you feel and they respect you and they grow with you. I think that is
Correct.
so
That's
important too.
important. Yeah.
And I think it would do us a disservice in talking about love if we didn't highlight the fact that the Bible describes it for us.
Mm.
The Bible has a definition for us for love. So if we look at that definition in First Corinthians, and if we put that person's name, somebody pointed this out to me a couple weeks ago. So if we put that person's name there instead of love, right? So if I say, it says love is patient, Andre's patient. Love is kind, Andre's kind. Love does not envy, Andre does not envy. It does not both. If you put your spouse's name there and you're able to identify each one of those qualities in your spouse or in the person that you're looking for to be your spouse, then you're probably in the right place. We have to use the biblical definition to outline our list that we so foreset, right? Because that is the perfect, we go to Webster's dictionary, we could do that. But the Bible outlines the perfect definition of what love should be. And those qualities should be on our list for a spouse that we're looking for.
Marilyn and I were talking about this. Tell us what you think. It's the question about the time period, Marilyn. We wanted to know, is there a certain amount of time that we should have between courtship to engagement to marriage that kind of guarantees the good marriage?
It's very individualized. I don't want to generalize this answer because courtship for me is developing that friendship component, getting to know someone on a more intimate level, to the fact that you know their likes, you know their dislikes, you know their red buttons, their buttons to push, because you have to know those. That's all a part of courtship, right? Engagement for me now is the time it takes for you to plan a wedding and get your affairs in order. Whether that is planning a wedding, whether it's completing premarital counseling, which we'll talk about because that is important, getting your finances in order if you need to do a prenup, things of that nature, that is that engagement period. For me, this is the question I'm going to pose. If you are engaged to someone and you are not planning a wedding, right? You're engaged a year, 2 years, and you're just engaged and there's no wedding in sight, ask yourself the question as, why am I not wanting to marry this person? Because there is a reason. Whether the reason, because it could also be the financial component of it, of you want a big elaborate wedding and you don't have the finances, so you're saving for that. That is understandable, because then you're still planning for a wedding, right? You're saving the money to then plan for a wedding. But if you are sitting stagnant in this engagement phase, why?
Wow.
Because that is a red flag.
Wow.
Next question, Matt, because like you're saying that.
That is very.
Mind is like thinking and kind of going through all,
Right. But yeah, and especially today with people going to school for a longer period of time and all of this, now you see more and more people going through courtship and engagement a little. Do you see this period a little longer than during our parents' time? But I feel like it's important. Like you still have to keep in mind that, okay, that is still the goal. What am I doing towards that goal, which is the end goal is to get married. So you still.
And if you're avoiding that goal,
so
by just staying engaged, what purpose does that serve?
I guess so. Here's where I'm kind of stumped, or not really stumped, but here's where my mind's going. Should I if I am in a relationship as a beautiful woman where I'm having to kind of coax and coach toward the next step, is that something that I should pursue?
Mm.
That is a conversation you need to have. There is, I feel as though in the courtship phase, everybody thinks everything is all roses and pretty and beautiful and laughing and having a good time. But there are hard conversations you need to have.
Mm-hmm.
If you are looking for this relationship to go long term, to if you're looking at marriage with this relationship and your person, the person you're dating, is not moving at a pace that you feel that you need to move, that is a conversation you need to have.
Yeah.
Because you both have to have the same expectations. If someone is saying, well, I don't want to get married for the next 5 to 7 years, and you're saying, well, I want to get married in 2 years, we have a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And that is a conversation you need to sit down and have. And that's what I said, in the courtship part, in the dating aspect, you are getting to know this person and you're getting to know them as to what they look for in a marriage as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because in this courtship phase, you're understanding, okay, so if I were to be your wife, what would be your expectations of me? That is all courtship. Courtship is not just going out to dinner, having a good time and come back home. You drop you back off, you say, hi, have a good night, thanks for the dinner, you know, da da da. No, courtship is the difficult conversations that you have to have.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're looking toward, don't wait till you're, and we're going to talk about that in the marriage life component, but don't wait till you're married to sit down to say, well, how many kids do you want? Next you find out they don't want kids.
Right.
You know what? So guys, if you would, in the comment section, I'm curious to hear what you think. Can you tell me some of the crucial questions or conversations or discussions that you think we should be right at this stage? What should we be talking about? Because I feel like we sometimes daydream about the fun and ooey gooey, lovey dovey kind of stuff. So tell us some tough questions that you think we should spend more time asking in the courtship relationship. And then I'd have another question, kind of off script, but you're talking about it's not only just going on dates. I don't really think going to the movies is a good date for people getting to know each other. And here's why. Not only because I'm narcoleptic, I'm just joking. I'm not really. But Karen told me, like, I'm not wasting any more money taking you to any movie where you fall asleep in the previews. Not only because of that, but I feel like when you go to the movies with a person, yeah, it's fun to pass time and you get to experience something new together. But for me, if you're really trying to know someone, learn more about them, us sitting together in a dark room and just staring on a screen, and then you drop me off and go, it was a great time, see you next time. Like, how have we learned anything more about each other?
Conversations are crucial during the courting phase. And it also depends on how long you're courting this person. How long are you dating? Personally, I love personal anecdotes because it makes it so realistic. My husband and I, we dated for 6 years before we got married. We were both in school. Before we got engaged, not married, because we were engaged for a year. Before we got engaged, we dated for 6 years. We were both in school. We were both pursuing professional aspects, but in our mind, we knew what the end would be. And because we dated for such a long time, the movies were fine every now and then, personally, because we've had those conversations. I think early on in the dating part, you guys, there shouldn't be an aspect where you're literally sitting and not communicating early on in dating, because you don't want to get 2 to 3 years down the road and you realize, oh, now I'm talking to you and I realize I really don't like you that much.
Exactly.
Because now you've wasted 2 to 3 years of your life. When this conversation could have occurred earlier had you guys just sat down. And I also, this is another key point I want to point out. It is crucial to be surrounded with people who are in the same phase of life that you are and above. So for someone who is in the courtship area, they're dating, You need to have other friends who are dating, and you need to have friends who are married. And then you need to foster or mentor people who are single.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Then when you move to the marriage aspect of your life, you will then make friends who are married and friends who maybe have kids, if that's something you're looking towards in the future, and then mentor someone who's in the dating aspect of their life.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me why.
Right?
Why?
Why to have those friendships?
Yeah.
It balances you.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when we're going to move on to married life in a little bit, being married. But in marriage is work. Okay? Let's not underestimate the work it takes to make this thing work. You need people who are doing the work as well.
Yeah.
Because even dated, you need people who are in a serious aspect of dating if you are seriously dating someone.
Mm-hmm.
Because the reason why I recommend that is because you have support. Is it easy to call it quits when you have no support?
Mm-hmm.
True.
And you need someone who you can have conversations with about things that you were questioning in your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you are in it by yourself, it feels so lonely. But come to find out, everyone else who's made it to married life went through this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're
Right?
not alone. Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
Having that support will help you.
Mm-hmm.
And it also will point out to you, you will see red flags a lot sooner when you go on group dates with other couples.
Mm-hmm.
Those red flags will come out a lot. And the reason it's so interesting, we're able to see red flags in other people's relationship faster than we're able to see them in our own.
Mercy.
So when you are in a group setting and you see a red flag in someone's relationship, and then you bring it up with the person you're dating, and they have an answer that's not reflective to what you expected, then you see your red flag. You're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That is not the answer I was expecting from you. So that is why it is so important to go on couple dates.
Yeah.
I recommend them, especially when you're not, and like you said, Renee, not to the movies. These couple dates have to be in maybe game nights,
Yeah.
right? Maybe going out to dinner where you guys sit down and talk, maybe having people meet at the same home to have a lunch, dinner where you can have conversations,
Right.
because then you feed off other relationships. And in the dating part, that is so important, like I said, to identify red flags.
Yeah.
That's
And
good.
Renee, there is also, to me, at the movies, there's also one of the compatibility component, because I really enjoy going to the movies. I don't fall asleep at all. I love that. It's
Correct.
something that we had early on in common with my husband, that I really enjoy movies. And it's something that after the movie, we can talk and start to read.
Well, see?
So for some people, that might be actually something that is beneficial to their relationship, because you bond with your boyfriend at that time, her husband later, through that thing. So that's one of the things that I wanted to say. And also, I know we want to jump into the married life, but I have one more question, a funny question for the gentlemen. So do you ladies think that women should require, when you get engaged, a certain type of ring? So because I've heard, especially here, not so much in France, but I've heard here a lot of women say that if I don't get at least this amount of diamonds, or like this my ring doesn't cost that much, then it's a no for me. And to me, I was baffled, because in my culture, it's not something that is big. So what do you ladies think about that?
I mean, for me, I'm not that, I don't want to use the word picky, because I admire anyone that knows what they want. I think that's an admirable trait, right? But for me, I don't care. That's my easy answer. Chiron is more like what you've described of Andre Shaenor. Chiron is more of that type A person. And, you know, I don't like stereotypes, so some of them are kind of true. So he's a Jamaican man, and Jamaican men know what they want.
They want.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so Chiron had a whole theme. He had not just the engagement ring, but the wedding band and everything. Like he knew even what he wanted my dress to, like he had a whole theme in his head.
Wow.
So I'm lucky with that because I know he's never gonna show up half stepping. I might, you know. So I'm just being honest. Like he even had a dream ring that he wanted. So he came with me to pick out his wedding band because he knew that I am more of a budget conscious person. And so I would try to, and I'm trying to make myself sound real nice. Budget conscious. So I try to pick
You're frugal.
Yes. You know, I try to pick a budget friendly ring that looked good, but probably wasn't as good. So he came to make sure that he got his dream ring too. So for me, to me, what's more important is what we're building together. I don't really, you know, I don't really care. But again, I don't know if it's just because my ring was pretty. Why?
Right.
I mean, and again, like Marilyn makes a good point where this goes back to societal norms, right? For when I look at my parents, right? Because my parents, were SDA. My dad is a minister. And when you talk about rings, that was just like, what? Why?
True.
My mom had her wedding ring, right? But my dad didn't wear a wedding ring. He didn't have one. So it goes back to societal norms of what you think your expectations are. And that goes back again to compatibility. They have to understand what you're expecting. If you're someone that likes the bling and the bling has to be a certain size bling, your person needs to understand that. And then if you're somebody who really doesn't care for it either way, which either way, I was just like, whatever, I didn't really care too much. And like Renee said, maybe because I got a nice one, that maybe. But you know, it depends on what your societal, what you accept as an individual. That's such an individualized question. And then also it goes back to where you are financially in your relationship. Because a lot of people sometimes will get engaged in a time in their life where they're not necessarily financially in the area to buy a ring. I've seen people get ring upgrades as they build their marriage. That is something that happens. So that also goes back to your being picky kind of deal. Is it that big of a deal? For me personally, no. It shouldn't be something where you say, if you are truly in love with this person, that shouldn't be something that says we're done. There are other factors that then factor into that if the ring is the reason why you ended the relationship.
So to me, there is a balance in the sense of, for me, I don't know how you live your wedding, ladies, but if it was up to my husband, we would have just go to court and that was it. But to me, I didn't want the big, like a lavish wedding. I just wanted something that I could like at least have my family, have my white dress. And so we had to, I think that was a compromise for us to have that wedding of my dream with a budget and with, yes, because I'm also frugal and that too. So I wanted the wedding of my dream, but with a budget and with also something that he would look back and be happy to. And as a matter of fact, after that, he was really happy to have his wedding. Okay, he almost tried to steal the show. So
this, I am so
yes.
So can you give us like a really, what is you hinted at marriage counseling, and I think that was something that was so powerful. Can you give us like a tip of what you would recommend that everyone know the answer to before stepping into marriage?
So yes. So before getting married, I highly, highly, highly recommend premarital counseling. Because one of the things that premarital counseling does, it forces you to talk about topics that you may not necessarily talk about in your everyday relationship. It focuses you to highlight what those red flags are, understand you and your boyfriend or girlfriend at the time, your fiance, having an understanding of what will I completely end this marriage for? What will I say? I am done. This is it. I'm leaving.
Deal breaker.
What are those factors? Yes. What are deal breakers? What are your deal breakers in a marriage? Marriage counseling highlights those things. And I know one of the things, give you guys my 5 pillars of marriage, right? So love is the foundation. I think of it as like a structure. Love is the foundation, but love alone don't make it work, right? You have these 5 pillars that keep your marriage alive. And we touch on those 5 pillars during premarital counseling. They include communication. We talk about how you communicate, how your spouse communicates to you, how you communicate to your spouse, and how you would like to be communicated to. Because that's a big one. You have to, your spouse has to understand how to talk to you.
Yeah.
Because if you come for my husband, he's a very relaxed person. He does not do the raised voice. He doesn't do the yelling. If we get to that, he's walking. We're done. The conversation here is finished. Me, I get very spirited. So I have to know how to communicate to my spouse in order to get a point across. Because if I go in there very hot-headed, angry, yelling, screaming, we're going to get nothing accomplished because he's already shut down. So we talk about that in premarital counseling. We talk about finances. Do you know the number one reason for divorce is finances? Because that is a topic that no one wants to talk about, and you get into a marriage and you realize, who's doing this?
Right.
So we talk about finances. We talk about in-laws. That is a big one. When you get married, as much as you want to think you're just marrying your fiance, you're marrying their family, right? And we talk about what that relationship will look like. Sometimes some relationships are better than others, and you each have to have an understanding of where you stand with your in-laws. And your spouse has to also understand your relationship with their family. We talk about intimacy. Intimacy has many components. It's not just sexual, right? You have to understand what your spouse's love language is. Because you have to figure out how to feed them intimately, right? When we think of intimacy, people just think, okay, it's sex. No, it's not. It goes way beyond that.
Right.
And then lastly, we talk about self-development, right? Because as much as when you come together in a marriage, you become one, you are also still your individual person.
True.
And you have to grow as an individual as much as you grow in that relationship. You don't want to become lost in your marriage. You don't want to forget who you are. And your spouse has to be there to empower you to develop as an individual.
Wow.
So this is why I say premarital counseling is so important, because we talk about those topics that you normally would not talk about in your everyday conversation.
That is so powerful. Definitely.
I think what you said just now about not becoming lost in your marriage is so deep, because I feel like we're all Christians here, and we understand marriage from the principle of oneness. And I feel like sometimes we don't understand that even in that oneness, there is definitely it's vitally important to maintain a sense of self, not selfishness, but a sense of self.
That part.
Because I feel like, and I'm so grateful to Karen. Karen is my husband. As we've done this journey together, where he's helped me to understand that in moments where you're trying to figure it all out, and just affirming your partner and saying, these are the things that I love about you, and these are some of the reasons I want to be with you for the rest of my life. If you start losing those things to become your partner, that I feel like that can also be problematic. And then if it continues unchecked, I feel like that can also lead to resentment, not knowing who you are. And yeah, that's a whole other, but yeah, I think
you just hit on such a hot topic of resentment and not growing as an individual within a marriage.
Yeah.
That is like you said, that's a whole nother.
That's a
That could
whole
be a conversation forever.
Right.
And
yeah.
then I wanted to
Mm-mm.
so the thing I also want to talk about, because you pointed out when we get this phrase that people have of two halves coming together to make a whole, I do not like that. You are two whole individuals who are coming together to empower each other, to support each other, to respect each other, to love on each other. You are two whole individuals. You
Mhm.
were a whole person before you got married. Why lose half of you to match the other half of them? That don't make any sense to me.
No.
Right? I completely disagree with that phrase that we're two halves coming together, because I don't want a half of a person.
No. No, you're showing up as, and we also cannot, we also should be very careful of trying to find what we think we lack in someone else. Meaning, if you have, we all have had some amount of traumatic experiences, I think. And I think while we can never be perfect, the work needs to be done to work on those areas of ourselves that we know needs work, so that we're not showing up expecting our partner to complete us in those areas. I feel like there's a difference between the compatibility that you described in the beginning of our conversation, where you mentioned that Andre is more type A and he balances you off in that area. Those aren't the type of complementing that we're talking about. We're talking about, I have trust issues and I'm insecure. And so I expect now my partner to make me feel secure, because that's what he needs to do, because he's my partner. I'm not saying that if the trust was breached by the partner, that there's not a certain amount of responsibility. But if I just have issues myself, it's so hard and unfair to show up in relationships expecting our other half to fix that for us.
So I started a blog, a marriage counseling, not marriage counseling, relationship counseling blog about a year and a half ago. And the first blog post I had before we can talk about anything with relationships was about self. You have to do the work on yourself before you can seek a partner. Because if you have unresolved trauma, that trauma is going to show up and show out in your relationship. And you're going to be wondering, why can't I make a relationship work? Or why am I always ending up with this type of person? Because it is the trauma that you have left unresolved that is now showing up. Seek individual counseling. Take care of yourself before you feel the need to take care of someone else. It is so like, and there's I'm not gonna get into the whole stigma that's attached to counseling, but women, let me tell you, ladies, I believe every person should have someone, even if you don't want to go to therapy. Do I recommend therapy? Yes, because it is an unbiased view that someone has of you. Have someone to talk to. Because sometimes we bury things so far down that we forget. And then all of a sudden we're having these issues in our marriage and we're like, where is this coming from? Only to know that you have this trauma and trauma is not necessarily abuse or neglect. Trauma is anything that has impacted you negatively.
Can be multifaceted, yeah.
Correct. So trauma could be the fact that growing up, you grow up in a household where your parents argue a lot. Did that have any effect on you physically or neglect? They took care of you very well, but you were in a household that was combative. That is trauma that you are now carrying into your relationship because you have not dealt with it. So deal with your own individual trauma before you try to find a bond with someone else.
That is so important. And sometimes, I mean, I don't want to, I don't want to make it biblical, but somehow it's when we talk in the Bible of generational curse, sometimes people think about like those spiritual component, but sometimes it is, and I was talking about it with a friend, sometimes it is those trauma that you keep from generation to generation and it kind of like becomes like a curse. And it's so important to get out of it by any means necessary, by therapy, as you said, group therapy, or group of, like, when you can talk with someone and exchange, or and also, of course, a lot of prayers behind all of
And
this.
that's why I love this podcast. I like the title, one, She Who Speaks, right? Empowering women to identify things within them that are taboo topics. I hate when women have taboo topics. That is my pet peeve, that you could call it my soapbox. I absolutely despise having taboo topics, because then we suffer in silence.
Yes.
And that is the beauty of this podcast, in that we are talking about topics that honestly women don't want to talk about, but guess what? You get to listen about it. Listen about other women going through it.
And we put ourselves out there. Don't judge us.
If we do it, you have to do it too.
Yes. You know what? I heard that, I think, and we're going to have to wind this bad boy down, because I feel like I'm just getting started and I'm excited. We could be here all day because I love this kind of stuff. But one thing, I remember when I got engaged, and then I went and did my marriage counseling, because for me, Shaenor, like, we've had these conversations. You know, I love anything behavioral. I get excited and I can go on for hours, and I have to literally tell people, just hang up on me, just hang up. So, I love it. But so for me, counseling is non-negotiable. It's kind of like you go get your car serviced to make sure it operates well.
Correct.
Why not do that for yourself? You're that important. You're that valuable. Always make sure that you're taken care of. So that's my little plug. But anyway, we were engaged, and I thought, man, I'm doing this great thing. We're doing couples counseling before we get married, premarital counseling before we get married. And when we showed up, our pre-marriage counselor was also a pastor. And he said to me, "You have a wedding date set already?" I was like, yeah, of course. Because, Karen proposed. I said yes. I gave myself an hour, then I got my book out. And because, and why wouldn't I have a date? That's the only responsible thing to do. He asked me like 3 or so weeks ago. Of course I have a date. And he was like, no, that's not even how it's supposed to go. And here's what he said. And I just thought I have to share this nugget before we go. He said, the first thing you want to do is find out if you're even compatible to be getting married. And then after that counseling, then you've kind of spoken through the big things, the hard things. Like if so many people aren't going to see this, I'd even mention some of what came up in my couples counseling. I was so embarrassed. I'm like, how dare you tell that secret to that man? How dare you? But it was there. Yeah, drive away feeling like your head's looking outside and his is looking ahead as he drives, and you're like, we're not talking after the session. We're not talking. But he's 100% right, because a lot of times when you set the date and you send out the save the dates and everyone knows now we're engaged, there's this pressure that if you're not strong, because it takes a level of strength to be able to say, I don't care what anyone knows and what they're expecting from me in this relationship, but I'm going to choose what's the right and best thing to do.
Hello.
Then you find yourself.
I told you my story.
You're going to have to tell us. But you find yourself committed to this date with this person who you already start realizing is not quite who you thought they were going to be. But now you've already sent out and you've already booked the place. And I mean, praise the Lord, that was not our experience. But when he said that, I remember that registered so well. And we spoke about it. I'm like, wow, that makes so much sense. But yeah, that's my little tidbit there.
Oh, that makes perfect sense, because I've heard experiences of women that says that they knew as they were walking down the aisle that they were making a mistake.
Yes.
Since they have like the financial aspect, that you're already invested in that you're already invested in the relationship, that you're invested. And then there is also some women who have already a baby with someone and stuff like another realm.
Yeah.
And you feel like you have to go through with that.
And this is why I included the topic of premarital counseling in that engagement period. Because before you make any plans towards a wedding, you have to go to counseling.
Yeah.
You are doing your relationship, your marriage, a disservice. You are setting yourself up ultimately for failure. if you do not start with premarital counseling.
Yep. Yeah.
Before you plan anything, you say, "Oh, we're getting engaged. Oh, great. Yes, I accept this ring. We're getting engaged. So what time is counseling?"
Yeah. You have to.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you start, like you said, you start planning all these things and you get, it's like this pressure that now I have planned this and I have to go through with this, but this is not the person for me. Right?
See.
Oh, the scenarios.
Yeah. Like I'm so tempted to tell some of my embarrassing little premarital counseling.
So okay, when we started premarital counseling, right? The first thing we were supposed to do was to get in an argument. That was our assignment. Our first assignment was you need to argue. And during that, we don't really argue. It's not something, we have conversations, but arguments not so much. So he said, you need to get in an argument. And we were like, what? Okay, whatever. So we go home, like he goes to his house, I go to my house, and I'm sitting there thinking, so what are we going to argue about?
Yeah.
Right? So I fabricated this argument out of nothingness because we needed to get into an argument. And for me, that taught me such a lesson of that started the conversation of how to communicate with my spouse.
Wow.
Right? Because there wasn't, the assignment in itself was there. And that's why even when I do counseling with people, I'm like, I'm giving you this assignment, but I'm not saying the assignment has to be done by the next session. That is where we missed. We were like, okay, we need to get an argument. We have this session coming up next week, Wednesday. We have to get this argument completed, like check box, let's move. So it taught us a very good lesson of communication because the assignment was to not get in an argument.
What? Okay.
The assignment was to see if we can go a week without getting into an argument.
Yeah.
But the assignment he gave us was to get into an argument.
Yeah, my overachiever.
The lesson behind that, right. So this is why I tell people premarital counseling is so important because it gives you assignments and it gives you tips of how to make your marriage work in the long run. If you want longevity with you, and like you said, Renee, you have to go in for a tune-up. Okay, it's not we do it at the start and then we're gonna last 25 years without a check-in.
No,
you're gonna break down. And you better hope when you break down, you have a mechanic that comes along to fix you back up to keep you going.
Exactly. And then sometimes too, if you don't get your tune-up, you'll be so surprised to realize you're on two different experiences.
Oh my God.
Oh wow, that's another one.
You're living two separate lives. There are marriages where people live two separate lives.
Mercy.
And they're married and they live
right.
And they sometimes they don't even realize that they're living two separate lives. They just go about their day-to-day activity and there is no that intimacy component, right? There is no intimacy, there's no self-development, there's no communication. You're just going as status quo.
Right. And that makes me think of a question. Do you think that in a couple, like when you get into that married life, do you always have to have matching energy? Like I'm giving whatever I give, you have to match what I give.
The 50-50 question.
Right.
Marriage is not 50-50. It is not. What?
Yeah.
Yes. Marriage is, it's not 50.
To hide it. I was like,
it's not 50-50.
Careful now.
Because think about it, right? Life evolves and life changes. And you guys, self-development comes along and you do something, say you go back to school or you do different things, you change careers. It fluctuates. Right? You have children, right? So you may start out being 50-50, saying, okay, I'm going to put this much, I'm going to put this much. And then for instance, personal anecdote, I went back to school, right? So what I am given in my marriage, I'm giving my 100% to my marriage, but is it equal to what my husband is given now that he goes to work and he comes home? I go to work, I come home, I have schoolwork. There's a difference. So now he's carrying that weight, he's carrying a heavier load, so to speak, and I think of a family. A family doesn't necessarily mean you have to have children. A family can be you and your husband. I have to redefine that every time. People think you have to have children to be a family. No. So when I say family, I'm talking about your marriage, if you have children, but just your household. So for us, our household became unbalanced in the fact that I had more demand outside of marriage. Right? And then we add in our little bundle of joy, who turns 1 tomorrow. And that then tips the scale a little bit. So sometimes, and then even when we were dating in the end stage of our courtship right before we got married, my husband was in school and I wasn't. So therefore I was pulling more of that weight, where I encouraged that self-development. You know what I'm saying? So there's no resentment that I have taken more, he has taken more, because that is that self-development that we encourage. But it fluctuates. Some days he's giving 80, some days I'm giving 20, some days I'm sick and out of it and I give 0 because I'm in bed and I have nothing to offer you right now. And he's pulling 100% of the weight. And then some days, some days we're 50-50. But for you to go in with the expectation that your partner is going to meet you 50% every single time is not fair. It's not fair to them.
Listen, I'm going to stop this goodness right now. I feel like you have to come back. You have to come back, because I feel like there's still so much we can talk about in terms of, we talked about the important things to look out for, getting up to the I do stage, but not quite after the I do. So would you please come back and talk us through how to...
I will. Yes, we were going to talk about marriage. That is I love marriage life conversation. Even before I was married, I love married life conversations. So I will be back.
Awesome. Exciting.
I really love this conversation because it makes you, sometimes you feel so isolated in your experiences. And it's like you realize that, hey, we are going through the same thing and it's normal, it's life. And it's just so exciting. And so I just take it all in.
This was so exciting. And we really have not even delved into what it looks like to have a great marriage, the tips that we need to make our marriage flourish. So Shaenor, you have to come back. Okay, perfect. But we also want to hear from you. Tell us a few things. Jump into our comment section. Do you have any great tips about how to effectively court? Is there such a thing? What about deal breakers that we need to look out for? Let us know about that as well. We love you so much. We thank you for spending your time with us. We hope that you find value in some of the things that we're discussing. As always, we want to hear from you, and we invite you to email us any questions that you have. We've gotten some really good suggestions so far. So you can email us your questions to the She Who Speaks podcast @gmail.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and keep those comments coming, and hit the notification bell as well, so you can always know when we have fresh content for you. This is Shaenor, Marilyn, Renee, and we are She Who Speaks. Thank you for coming. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.